Hey, today is June 6th, 2020. We're going to continue our interview with Norm Rosenkrantz. Okay, Dad, so you have a lot of stories that you wanted to tell or that you thought of after our last interview.
Yes, I have about six incidents, but I did want to say, can't believe it. It is June 6th, and June 6th is known for D-Day. This was when the Allied forces invaded Normandy. Many people were successfully uh, went into Normandy, and there were many people that never made it, soldiers that never made it either. So it's a day of memory, but thank God it ended up successfully. Uh, did want to, since I spoke to Mike last, I told me to think about a few things, if I could remember some stories. And I went back and I could remember a story. Uh, one is about a movie in 1939. That's when Gone with the Wind was released, the famous Gone with the Wind. And I do remember that when we used to go to the movies, it was 10 cents an admission price. But for this particular movie, they raised the price to a horrendous amount. It was 25 cents a person. And I remember that my parents, uh, my mother, my father, Louis, Miriam, and Jerry, we all went to see Gone with the Wind. The one thing I can tell you about Gone with the Wind is I don't know how many times I've seen it throughout the years. It was a movie which, as the more times I saw it, the more times I understood it. And it even comes back to today with the chaos, with everything that is going on in this world when the United States was in the Civil War and we split, and we had the North and the South, the gray and the blue. Brings back a lot of memories. But every time I think of Gone with the Wind, I think of things that are going on today. Yep. So that was one story. And I also have another movie story. Saturday was a day when kids like myself went to the movies. And I used to take my brother Jerry to the movies when we lived on Vise Avenue in the Bronx. And we used to go on Saturday mornings, and we used to stay for a long time. And it used to be known that we used to take along with us what we called brown bag lunches. We had sandwiches and desserts, cookies, and whatever we could take for a lunch break. they used to, anyhow, we used to leave like 9:30, quarter to 10 in the mornings. And we went to a theater that was, for you people from the Bronx, was on Boston Road, and it was called the Loews Ellesmere. I don't know why I remember the name, but I do. And we stayed for a long time. Maybe if the movie opened at 10 o'clock, we would be there on time. And of course, all we needed was a dime, as I said before, which is amazing. When the movies first opened up, I think they were a penny, and then they raised it to a nickel. And I was at the place. This is when I was 13, so it was around, I was 1942 when the movies were that inexpensive compared to today's price, when we're talking about anywhere from $10 to $14. It's a wow, really a wow. And the thing is that when we went to the movies, we used to go because they showed serials. A serial is, I don't know, something like 20 minutes, and it's an episode that was continuous from week to week. So they showed these episodes, and the one that I liked, I don't know the ones that Jerry liked, was something called Flash Gordon. And Flash Gordon used to roam around in outer space. He had a rocket ship, and he had a girlfriend, and her name was Dale. And so we used to go every week to see the movie serials. And the one who played Flash Gordon, his name was Buster Crabbe. And I remember him because I believe he was an Olympian. He was pretty famous. I believe he was a swimmer. I'm not sure. I didn't do my homework on it. But I remember him. And he had a nemesis named Dr. It wasn't Nemesis. Oh, I had it in my head, but Dr. Ming. And he looked like a Dr. Ming. He had a beard that came down pointy. He and Flash Gordon always had fights throughout the whole universe. So that's another story that I remember. But I do remember also in the movies that they made it a longer day, and with your ticket, you used it for a raffle. They used to have raffles every week. So they really made it exciting for young kids coming to the movies. And the movies were packed, and they were noisy, and kids really enjoyed themselves. Another story that I have is that on my block, as I told you, a block away before, I used to have my school, my public school. And they also had something that was very famous. It was a delicatessen. Everybody knows what a delicatessen is. But this one was right on the corner of 174th Street and Bays Avenue. And this deli, their specialty naturally was to buy a hot dog with mustard and sauerkraut for the total price of 15 cents. 15 cents. Wow. So, but prices were adjusted accordingly. And I guess when you think about it, 15 cents was the right price. But I can say the hot dog was a yum yum. It was a great deli. And most of the delis were, I know today, delis, you find them hard to exist. They just are not around. I have where we live, we have a deli called the Kosher Bite. It's very apropos. And it's a small little place, and it's run by a woman, and she has one employee. But when you think of a deli, years ago, delis were packed. They were crowded. They had full meals. And I know that every time I used to visit my father when in Long Island, he would take me to this great deli, which had so many varieties of soups and all things of Jewish nature that you could think of at a deli. Used to love going to the deli and especially visiting him. It was a great place, but now that I live in Orange County, there's one deli really in existence that's in Orange County. There are other delis, but this one is a little higher class, sort of like New York. Yeah, those were the days. And you want me to go on, Mike?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. And one of the things that I remember as a kid is boxing. I say, why boxing? Because my father and also Simone's father loved boxing. But the boxing that I want to talk about is when my father on Saturday mornings, he took us to a movie theater called the Loew's Chester. Now, this movie was unique because we used to see boxing bouts. Whatever was happening in Madison Square Garden in downtown New York, well, they filmed it. Of course, we didn't have TV at that particular time. And so we used to go to the movies with a friend of his, Isaac Kessler, who also knew movies, who also knew boxing. And we used to watch the fights, and they gave us the 3-minute rounds. So if the fight was 15 rounds, well, we saw the 15 rounds, and then we saw the decision. And I remember that we saw quite a bit of the Bronx, what was his name? The Bronx Bomber? Not the Bronx Bomber. It was Joe Louis. You don't know, Mike, right?
Brown Bomber.
Brown Bomber. That was his name, the Brown Bomber. And we used to see all of his fights. And naturally, there were many other boxes around too. So we used to go on a regular basis on Saturday mornings. And so it's still in my head, and I remember it quite a bit looking forward to seeing the boxing fights. So that, I guess, will always be with me. And that's the one sport that my father loved to see. Later on, I remember when TV came in and Pop would always want to watch the fights. Many times when they were fighting, he would actually get out of his seat. He would get up and he would start to fight and with the fighters themselves. And that was funny watching him. And then, then when Simone and I got married and I was at their house sometimes, that Louis Zients, he would also become very emotional and get up and throw a left, throw a right, throw a jab, so forth. It was something, but that's what men do. So, and but I never myself got up. And boxing was fun when we were a kid, but it didn't stay with me. I went more to baseball, football, hockey, basketball, basketball nut. Yeah, I think I gave that to Mike. He's developed it way beyond me. But I was a big sports fan.
But you did box when you were what, 90 or something?
Yeah, in fact, do I have I have a picture here somewhere, which I should show you. I'll get my daughter Robin to get it because it's in a pile of papers here. Mike is right. I went to a boxing class.
What do you
Uh, yeah, there should be a picture here of a boxing class.
Don't you have that one up there on the cover, Dad? Is that you boxing in the corner?
Yeah, that's it. But I
But
thought maybe it was here too. Did you see? Let's see.
Which pile would it be in?
Which pile? Yeah. Oh.
Got a lot of important papers there.
Yeah. Yeah. No. You don't see it. Maybe I'll take this off and show it to you. I hope you'll be able to see it. Oh no. It's hard to see. Hard to get off. Okay, wait a minute. Bear with me, people. Whoever is watching this. Okay, here we go. Does that look very dark, Mike?
I can see it.
Can you? So here I am. When I was 90 years old, I found this class. In fact, my wife found the class. And it's at the Mission Viejo Community Center. And there's the man with me won a championship, and he was very, very professional. And he was teaching men and women how to box. And we used to, he made a ring. It was out of a plastic, inflated plastic. There was a ring, and everyone stood around the ring, and they had boxing gloves. But before he started the actual class, he would give us about a half hour of exercises and limber us up. And he really had great exercises that limbered us. And you felt so relaxed. And then he and another gentleman would go around the ring, and they would have us do actual boxing. He would have gloves on each hand, and we would jab each hand like boom, 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 or he'd have us do a combination like boom, 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 uppercut. So it was fun, but one time when I was doing this, I hurt my thumb. So there sort of went my boxing career. But then I came back for the exercises, and now even the exercises, they're getting to be a little bit too much for me. So my boxing career ended, but I did box. Thanks for reminding me, Mike.
Yeah. What other stories do you have?
And Mike, in fact, wrote a story about it.
Yeah.
And I think, Mike, you should put that in if you can fit
Yeah.
it into the. No?
What other stories do you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you about a few other things uh, that I remember. Well, I do remember one very important world incident that happened. We didn't live on Vise Avenue, and I was much younger. It happened in 1937. So I was 8 years old, and I was going to, public school. And the incident that happened was that there was a Zeppelin that came from Berlin. I believe it came from Berlin. And it was coming to the United States, and it was called the Hindenburg. It was a German Zeppelin. And it landed in New Jersey. And what happened as it was landing, trying to land, something happened. There was a fire, and all of a sudden it exploded, and everywhere. And that is very famous. I'm sure you could get it on the computer yourself, and you could see what happened to the Hindenburg. But I remember that it stuck in my mind as a world incident. I guess maybe from that made me more aware and think about current events. And in fact, I think I told you before on this prior tape that I was in a special history class when I was in the 6th grade. I like current events, and I watch that cable news, and so you know that I like current events. And one other incident that I wanted to tell you about was about my mother, and my brother Jerry would be interested in this because he is looking for facts all about Miriam. And unfortunately, he doesn't remember it that much, and he was relying on me and my cousin Saul Greenbaum to give him information. But one of the things that we used to do when I was a kid, I was sick. I used to have what they call sinus attacks. And when you had a sinus attack, which was in your nose became stuffed up. And so the way they used to treat it, which they never will today, is they used to take swabs. And we all know about swabs and the virus testing. They used to take swabs of a medication called Odgerol. And they used to take these swabs and they used to put them through your nostrils to give you relief because the sinus attack, your nostrils used to get all stuffed up. And this was one of the solutions. And the reason I'm telling you this is because my mother used to take me quite often to a clinic, which was in downtown Manhattan. I don't know, it was 11th Street or so, 2nd Avenue, something like that. And we used to go there pretty often. And then afterwards, we used to go to my mother's aunt. And this was always a nice visit. Her name was Aunt Rose, and Saul Greenbaum. Saul, the last name was Greenbaum. Saul was her son, whom Jerry knows and I know, and we know for many years. But it was just a story of how dedicated she was. We didn't have money, and we didn't have a car, so we used to go downtown taking the subway. And I do remember at one time the subway price was a nickel. Today I think it's about $2.50, something like that. But that's another story that I thought of when Mike encouraged me to think about more things.
What was the special history class? You didn't mention that last time.
Well, the special history class was the teacher used to bring in clippings of newspapers and stories, and he used to call on us and see if we were familiar with it or knew it. And I never read newspapers that much when I was younger, and he would educate us. And the class was about, I don't know, 45 minutes, something like that. And we learned about different places of the world, and who knew? I had never been away. I wasn't, when I was 9, 10, 11, I was never on an airplane. We didn't know about these things. Yeah, we knew about them, but we never went on that for vacation. The only place that we used to go on vacation would have been the Catskill Mountains. And that would have been, for a week or two for the family to get out of the hot city, the sweaty city, and because it was summertime, and that's what I could remember. But it always stuck to me about history, and to the point that now, before all this virus happened, Simone and I, my wife and I, we had taken a history class, United States history, and given by a former history teacher. His name is Bob Hayes, very interesting gentleman. And it's great really learning about the revolution, and because this time it's so much more serious, and you're interested all about our forefathers. I am, and Simone is too. And we're waiting to start. This is June 2020. We're waiting to start our history class again if we could open the Norman Murray Community Center.
Okay, let's stop this part. Okay.